Dear listeners, thank you for your incredible support in helping our channel grow. We're aiming for 1,000 subscribers, so please support us by subscribing and helping us reach this milestone. Now let's start the story. Flashback, Ben and Jack, back at the base. This was getting insane. No sooner than one nurse finished than another took her place. I was too tired and becoming majorly sore. There was a knock at the door and the current nurse yelled, "Wait your turn." The door opened and in walked Colonel Maggie. She complained, "Wait my turn for what?" The current nurse slid off me and apologized. "Sorry, sir. I thought you were the next one in line." Maggie grilled her. "The next one in line?" She sputtered. Well, the next nurse for Sergeant Blaine." Maggie really laid into her. "Nurse, aren't you an officer, and isn't Sergeant Blaine is a non-com? Do your supervisors know about your fraternization with a non-com?" The nurse was dressing hurriedly and admitted, "No, sir, they don't know about it. We came up with this plan to thank Sergeant Blaine for saving Cindy's life." Colonel Maggie saves my, but when she says, "Well, I would say Sergeant Blaine has been thanked enough. Now get your butt out of his room and let him rest." She began to slink out of the room like a dog with its tail between its leg, and Colonel Maggie added, "And tell everyone else to leave Sergeant Blaine alone. The poor man needs his rest." Colonel Maggie apologized to me. "Sorry, Sergeant Blaine. I just caught wind of what was going on, or I would have put a stop to it sooner. I couldn't believe they were physically fighting over who got to be with you next." I profusely thanked her. "Colonel Maggie, thank you so much for saving me from this. I wasn't sure how much longer I could stand it, especially since all I really want to do is sleep." She smiled at me and said, "Well, I'm sending Sergeant Reynolds back to your room, so that should put the kibosh from any more of the nurse's shenanigans. However, if I were you, I would take a shower before you go to sleep." I smell that bad?" Colonel Maggie laughed and said, "No, you smell worse." Colonel Maggie left. The corporal came in with Jack, and Jack immediately complained, "Damn, it smells like a French 304 house in here." The corporal announced the obvious, "Ben got lucky, many times over." I asked, "Corporal, find me some new sheets while I go take a shower." I began to leave and Jack teased, "So did you get your fill of sex?" I teased right back, "Hell yes, I had more sex than you and Masha ever dreamed of having. It must have been 10 or 15 women." Jack laughed and corrected me. "The running count I heard was 20, but there's some question whether the last one counted because Colonel Maggie interrupted her." I walked out the door and swore, "It sure is counted." Damn, I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing my butt off. Ben was rode hard and put away wet. Hell, he's probably lucky Colonel Maggie put a stop to the sex, otherwise the nurses might have killed him. From the reports I heard, he was a sexual machine that the nurses couldn't get enough of. And he was right. Masha and I had sex like a couple of rabbits, but never came close to 20 times. The corporal had taken the nasty sheets off Ben's bed, so the room smelled better. I hated like hell having to sleep on my stomach, but with this wound, my only other choice was my side. I rolled on the non-shot side and no sooner drifted off to sleep when I was rudely awakened. Ben flew into the room and bolted the door on the inside. Someone banged on the door and yelled, "Sergeant Blaine, it's time for your treatment." Ben complained, "Jack, the nurses caught me in the shower and tried to screw me to death." I laughed because this was better than a 3-ring circus and teased, "Just remember, no good deed goes unpunished." There was a different knock on the door and the corporal said, "Sir, I have your new sheets." Ben asked through the door, "Are there any nurses around?" The corporal replied, "Not any that I can see." Ben unbolted the door, yanked the corporal into the room, slammed the door, and bolted it again. It was just in time because the banging on the door from the nurses began again. The corporal asked, "What was all that about?" I laughed and answered, "Ben saved the head flight nurse, so now he's their hero, and they are repaying him with sex." The corporal's eyes got big, and he said, "Wow, are you ever lucky?" Ben was making his bed and doing a half job, but I would give him shit about it in the morning. I didn't have the heart to tell the corporal that too much of a good thing is bad, but I did ask, "Hey, I never got supper. Do we have any MREs in the room?" Ben had finished making his bed, fell into it, and was dead to the world as the corporal answered, "We sure do. Would you like for me to fix one for each of us?" I asked, "You didn't eat yet?" The corporal laughed, "Hell no. Tonight's meal was turkey surprise. The surprise is that you're sick for the next 2 days after eating it. Do you think Ben would like an MRE?" I looked at him to see he was tossing, turning, and moaning, "No more." I said, "I think he needs sleep more than anything else." The corporal made us a couple of MREs and doctored them up some similar to how Ben made his. They were good, but not as good as his. Flashback, Masha, the next day. The alarm sounded. Louise practically jumped out of bed and asked, "What the hell is that for?" I replied, "I always get up a little early, do some light exercises, and have breakfast." Louise complained, "Well, since I'm already awake, I might as well join you." We both got out of bed. Linda began to coo, and Louise said, "I'd better change her first." I smiled and said, "Please take your time. I will get ready and wait for you." I waited in the living room. Finally, Louise and Linda arrived. I said, "I only have one yoga mat, so you use it, and I will use the floor." We started off with the sun salutation, the beginning basic set of movements in yoga, used in most classes. The first asana, a yoga pose or posture, is Tadasana, arms freely to the side. Moving to Urdhva Astasana, arms overhead with the palms together. Then you raise your head and look at your hands. The first obstacle was Louise's breathing, so I instructed her, hold each asana for 2 full yoga breaths. Then I had to give her instruction on what a yoga breath was. I had to slightly correct Louise's posture in both poses. Typically, most people slouch forward in the shoulder area. This comes from sitting too much and the generally poor posture of the American people. Then we moved to Uttanasana. Exhale and bend forward trying to touch the floor, and then to flat back Ardha Uttanasana. Inhale, move all the way down, and try to touch your head to your knees. Louise struggled with both asanas while I easily touched my forehead to my knees. Louise commented, "Wow, you're really flexible." I delivered 2 corrections. Louise, yoga is not a competition. You do your best on each asana, and you also never speak while doing yoga. We continued with a jump back lunge. I jumped back into a lunge position with my right foot at the back and my fingertips on the floor. Louise tried to mimic me and fell over on her side. I helped her up and said, "That is a normal beginner's mistake." Once again, I corrected her position because she wasn't in a straight line from the rear foot to the shoulders. I slowly brought my left foot back to match my right foot and was in the Plankasana. It looks like the top position of a push-up. Louise struggled to get her foot back because of her inflexibility, but she finally made Plankasana and complained, "Wow, this is really hard." I shushed her with a smile and replied, "The next asana is too advanced for you, so here is what I want you to do." I drop my knees and my chest to the floor. Louise easily performs this asana while I do Chaturanga Dandasana, a bottom push-up position, with my arms held tightly against the side of my chest held for several breaths. We both drop to the floor mat, and then I push up with my hands, forcing my shoulders apart into Cobra, upward-facing dog. We take a couple of breaths to rest, then push back into downward-facing dog, feet on the floor, arms extended straight, bent at the waist. It looks like the letter A without the crossbar. We do another lunge forward. This time the left foot stays back, and once again Louise has issues getting her foot forward, but finally does. We bring both feet together, back into Urdhva Astasana, and then slowly roll up, 1 vertebra at a time to Tadasana. I do several deep cleansing breaths which Louise mimics, and she says, "Wow, what a workout." I looked at the clock, realized we had more time and asked, "We have time for some Tebow, then you could shower while I made breakfast." Louise asked, "That sounds sort of like martial arts?" "I would love to." I provided Louise with more information. Tebow is a portmanteau of Taekwondo and boxing. Furthermore, it is a backronym for total commitment to whatever you do, awareness of yourself and the world, excellence, the truest goal in anything you do, the body as a force for total change, obedience to your will and your true desire for change. We headed out to the garage, put Linda in a rolling baby walker. I handed Louise my Tebow gloves and asked, "See if these fit you." She tried them on, and they didn't fit as they should, but it would be better than nothing, so I said, "Just make sure you're careful not to injure your hand." Then I spent about 5 minutes showing her how to correctly strike with the hand so she doesn't injure her wrist, and finally suggested, "Since you're a beginner, most of your strikes should be palm strikes." I demonstrated a very hard palm strike on the heavy bag. Louise asked a very good question, "Masha, I only see 1 bag here. How can we do this together?" I laughed, moved to the corner, pulled out a Tebow dummy, and said, "This is Major Mike. He's named after one of my nemesis, and you will use him while I use the heavy bag." Linda was having a great time rolling all over in the garage while I put on some music and ordered, "Try to keep up." We started off with some basic punches, moved into combinations, then included knees and kicks, and then combined everything. 10 minutes later, Louise dropped to the floor and complained, "Mercy Annie Masha, I'm exhausted and still have to work today." If this is what you do every morning, no wonder you're such a bad aunt. I smiled at Louise and said, "To be truthful, that was just my warm-up. But I can tell you're done for the day. Why don't you take a shower and I will make breakfast?" Louise gladly agreed, proceeded into the shower as I scooped up Linda, brought her in the house, and began breakfast. Flashback, Jennifer, the military academy next day. As I continued talking with the other girls, the stories they told me were shocking. So shocking I will not repeat them here. In fact, just getting them out of my mind will take all my concentration, and I'm sure I will have nightmares tonight because of them. One of the girls began to yell, "Fire! I smell a fire." There was screaming and crying from down the hallway, so I dashed down to the prison cell they had me in, and I couldn't believe it. Someone set the cell on fire, which was shocking because I didn't think there was enough material to start a fire in the cell. What was even more shocking was the commandant, and the Gulag biatchs weren't even trying to escape. They were hugging in the middle of the cell, surrounded by the fire. Some of the girls began to cheer, which was very morbid, while I hunted for a fire alarm. I finally found one, pulled it, and a huge siren went off. Daddy ran back and asked, "What's going on?" I replied, "Daddy, the cell is on fire, but I think they might have done it to themselves." Daddy looked through the window and agreed, "Jennifer, they aren't even trying to escape, so I think you're right." Daddy ordered, "All girls go outside immediately so you don't impede the firemen who will be coming." Then he whispered to me, "Jennifer, take good care of them." I waved my arm and said, "Okay, you heard the general. We need to move outside, follow me." I was amazed when they fell in behind me and began to march. Things were fine until someone began to sing, "Ding dong, the witches are dead. Witches are dead. Witches are dead. Ding dong, the wicked witches are dead." I was upset, stopped, turned and said, "That's enough of that bovine excrement song. I don't give a rat's derriere what they did to you. Rejoicing in the death of anyone is morbid, and I will not tolerate it. If you don't like it, then I will personally kick your rears." That shut them the heck up, and we continued to march outside. We made it outside and under a big tree as the fire truck showed up. I directed them, "The fire is contained in a cell in that building." I no sooner said that when the fire broke through the roof of the prison area and the firemen rushed toward the conflagration. They called in more trucks and more firemen. Then the main person, I guess he was the fire marshal, came up to me and inquired, "Miss, do you know what happened?" I began to answer when the police arrived. Flashback, Alexei, back in his room. I waited for the psychologist, and he finally came to my room. I began to cry, for real, and asked, "Sir, I don't understand why Mother killed Chow Mein. Now I worry that someday she will try to kill me." I added the last statement to make things more interesting. The psychologist said, "Alexei, your mother is very unstable. When Chow Mein turned on her, she couldn't handle it. I'm sure that would never happen with you." I continue with the tears and add, "But sir, I am always a disappointment to her." He interrupted, "Alexei, I don't want you to worry about this because you might not ever live with your mother again." I question, "But will I ever live with my father again?" He avoided the question when he said, "Alexei, perhaps in time after your father has healed. Remember, he has suffered as large a shock as you." I wasn't so sure about that, but I was tired and said, "Sir, I think I would like something to help me sleep." He replied, "I will send the orderly in immediately. And don't worry, we will talk many more times in the near future." He left, and I waited for my sleeping pill. Flashback, Ira and Mira, continuing. I finally staunched the sanguineous flow from Myra's wound again and postulated what I must accomplish to keep her from attempting to locomotivate. After reflection, I removed some strips of my clothing and bound her extremities. That should rectify the situation. Flashback, Todd, on the mission. Gail tried her best to sneak some wine from Maria or myself, but we both deftly avoided it. In fact, it became sort of a little game we played. Gail tried to distract us and sneak from one of our glasses. However, we never set the glasses down and confounded her plans. The meal over, I yawn and sign. "Do you know of a nice hotel that's close?" Gail offers, "Todd, you can spend the night at our place. We have a great couch." Maria blushes and apologizes, "Sorry, Todd. We do have a nice couch, but I would not be comfortable with you spending the night at our small apartment." I sign, "Don't worry. I have no intention of spending the night in your apartment." Then I tease, because Gail might try to attack me. Maria laughs, and Gail quickly signs, "You only wish I would attack you. You're the perfect age for Maria, but way too old for me." Maria says, "Yes, I know a great hotel. Let's take you there now." We call a taxi. Maria gives them directions, and once again Gail is forcing Maria against me. On the way, Gail signs, "Todd, what are your plans tomorrow because Maria is off work and I don't have any school?" I rub my chin, consider the offer, and suggest, "Well, if you two aren't busy, I would love to see more of the city before I leave." I decide that if I delay my trip back to go after the company, it's to my tactical advantage. Gail signs, "Good, it's a date." Maria says, "Todd, you don't have to do this if you don't want to." I sign, "No, I think it's a great idea." We're at the hotel, and the girls exit the cab with me. I hold Maria's hand and kiss her on the cheek. Then I shock Gail by giving her a kiss on the lips, without tongue of course. She begins to pretend to choke while Maria and I laugh. I sign, "What time should I expect you tomorrow?" Maria questions, "Would 9 be too late?" I reply, "That's perfect. See you tomorrow." I walk into a very nice hotel, take a room on an upper floor, take off my clothes, and immediately fall to sleep. Present, Ben, and the rest, the next morning. The only reason I slept at all last night was the help from my liquid sleeping aid, bourbon. I kept worrying that Mira could be right and that her baby was ours, but I finally got drunk enough that I passed out. The damn wake-up call rang the phone, and I knew I drank too damn much because my head felt like Thor was hammering on it with Mjolnir. The empty bottle I knocked off on the nightstand when I reached for the phone reaffirmed my assumption. Damn, a whole 750 milliliters of Knob Creek. No wonder I felt like shit. I finally pick up the phone, and the concierge much too cheerfully announces, "Ben Blaine, this is your wake-up call." I mumble and remind her thanks. "Please don't forget the other rooms." She cheerfully answers, "Do not worry, Ben Blaine. I called them first." Then I hang up the phone and fight my way out of bed. I have the sheets wrapped around me 4 times, but after I free myself, I head into the shower. I crank up the hot water, slip off my underwear, and step into a damn hot shower. I let the water flow over my body, and no sooner begin to relax when someone starts to bang on the door. I bellow, "I'm in the shower and will be out when I'm done. Now leave me alone." Mira oculates me and inquires, "My sister Ira, I do not believe that my Ben feels well this morning. Perhaps I should enter his room and appease his appetites. Has my sister Mira totally lost all of her logic due to rampaging hormones?" I glare at Mira and icily reply, "Miranda, if you were to forcefully enter his room now, Ben would interpret it as an attack and you along with the dreaded fetus could be injured." Mira pauses for a moment to contemplate my assertion and thank God agrees. "Yes, Ira, I do believe your wisdom here is appropriate. Besides, Ben and I will share a bed many times later today after he discovers it is our fetus I am carrying." Ira, I did not realize that gestational processes would so greatly increase my desire for coitus. Now I understand Safia's multiple copulations with Alexei more completely. They were hormonally inspired. We are interrupted as stillbound Safia and Zarika shuffle to Ben's door. Safia immediately complains, "Ira, you must release us from this cruel and unusual punishment." Zarika reaffirms, "Yes, Ira. Going to the bathroom was a terrible ordeal, and I did not know that much stench could come from one person." Safia moves her head in such a way as to pull Zarika's hair. Zarika pulls back as they both continue to argue. I smile at both of them and counsel, "From your actions, I have determined you have not yet discovered your lesson. Therefore, you will remain bound." Ben finally opens his hotel room door, sees Safia and Zarika, which are still bound, and laughs. "Hell, that's a trick I need to learn." I offer, "Ben, I will gladly teach you this trick." Ben obviously teases, "Perhaps I could use it on you and Mira the next time she talks about that thing being our baby." He points at Myra's enlarged stomach. Mira complains, "You will see today, Ben, whose baby I am carrying. And when you discover it is yours, I expect many hours of compensational copulation. Gestation has made me greatly desire copulation." Safia and Zarika affirm, "Yes, we both need sex in the worst way, but Alexei ignores us." I can tell Ben wants to say some immoral words, so I suggest, "Perhaps we should partake of the free breakfast before our trip this morning?" Mira questions, "This morning? I thought the test results were this afternoon." Ben says, "They are, but I found a clinic for treatment of Alexei, Zarika, and Safia." The girls begin to complain, but Iris silences them by grabbing their knitted-together hair and marching them toward the restaurant. We arrive at the restaurant, walk inside, and everyone stops and stares at us. I lean over and threaten, "One word from either Zarika or Safia, and I make sure you stay in the clinic for years." I smile at everyone and tell a whopper, "Sorry for the surprise, everyone. We are practicing for a movie. And these 2 young ladies are pretending to be captured." The crowd accepts the whopper and even begin to clap and cheer. I lean over to Ira and order, "Get them out of this ASAP." I am amazed because it doesn't take Ira any time at all to free the girls. She frees them and adds a threat, "If you two do not behave, you will never see our brother Alexei again." I ask, "Where's Alexei?" Ira replies, "He is not suitable for human contact at this time since his mind is totally occupied with his alimentary canal. I have to keep his hands restrained, otherwise he continually disobliges it. I will prepare a plate of food and feed him myself." I'm impressed as hell with Ira since she's been such a great help. Unlike her sister Mira, who has basically been a huge, not just figuratively, pain in the butt. Ira takes 2 plates of food and leaves with them. Mira picks at the food and I threaten, "Don't you dare complain about the food or you won't eat." Safia and Zarika load up their plates and I inform them, "Girls, this is a buffet, which means you can come back for seconds." Safia remarks, "That is excellent news because I did not get anything to eat last night. I get some eggs, a couple pieces of ham, and some yogurt with fresh berries." I choose a table, the rest of the entourage follows me. We sit down and thank God eat in silence. The silence reminds me of one of the many meals I had at home while I was growing up. Present, Jens and the gang, the next day. Quadruple rats. What should have been an easy task, finding Ben, turned into an impossibility. We finally gave up for the night, pulled into a motel, which didn't look too seedy, and took rooms for all of us. I made sure to triple-check the rooms for hidden cameras and bed bugs. I didn't find any, but I still didn't trust them, so I planned on sleeping in my clothes tonight. The last thing I want is for my nude body to be posted all over the internet. I called Gretchen and asked, "Gretchen, any more sightings of Ben's truck on the traffic cameras?" Gretchen very crabbily replies, "Hell no. Not only that, they caught my hack and shut it off. So now we're flying blind." That gave me a possible idea, so I ask, "I've seen a hell of a lot of drones around. Is there any chance we can hack into their video feeds?" Gretchen answers, "That's a good idea. I will see what I can do." There's a knock on the door, so I answer, "Come on in." Tom walks into the room, holds up a scanner and assures me, "I swept the rooms for bugs and cameras and didn't find anything." I reply, "I checked my room and didn't find anything either, but I'm still sleeping with my clothes on." Tom scans my room and announces, "No need to do that unless you want to, since your room is clean." Tom informs me, "Did you know they have smart TVs here with internet access?" I point to the table and reply, "I already have my laptop set up." Tom suggests, "I have a few ruminations to follow if I can use your laptop." I say, "Go for it." He sits down at my laptop, pulls up Google Maps, and begins to mark off the hotels we've already checked with big red X's. He stares at the map and the red X's and swears, "God damn it. How did we miss that?" I dash to the computer, look over his shoulder, and ask, "Missed what?" Tom laughs and says, "Well, I sure as hell know how we drove past that hotel, since it's a little off Colfax Avenue. But it's a chain hotel, and my best guess is we will find Ben there." I ask, "What's your thinking on this?" Tom replies, "Well, they have underground parking for one thing, and the second thing is he could be sure there weren't any cameras in the rooms. Both of those would be a big priority to someone trying to hide." I jump up and say, "Let's get going." Tom shoots down my plan, "Jennifer, I would love to do that now. However, we exhausted Liz today, and because she's pregnant, she needs her rest." I think for a moment and agree with Tom. "Tom, thanks for everything. You're right. If Ben's there tomorrow, we'll join him soon enough. We do need to let Liz have her rest." But there was no rest for me tonight, because all I could think of was meeting Ben again tomorrow and what my actions would be. I only hoped and prayed that my plan worked. Present, Stacy and Samantha, following Jennifer. We watched as the bitch checked more hotels than I even knew existed, and thank God, she drew a blank at each one. They finally pull into a crappy-looking hotel and went in. I worry that she found Ben. Bill says, "Don't get your hopes up, Ms. Summers. They have stopped searching for the night and will continue tomorrow." The pilot informs us, "Ms. Summers, we are bingo fuel." I ask, "What does that mean?" Bill explains, "It means we have just enough fuel to return to Leadville." I ask, "Can we refuel at one of the local airports?" The pilot affirms, "Of course we can. In fact, it would be preferable because the flight back to Leadville would put me over my operational hours for today." Bill adds additional information, "Ms. Summers, he is limited to 8 hours of flight time every 24 hours. He will need at least 8 full hours of rest to be able to fly us tomorrow." I smile and order, "Well, that settles it. Find us a nice little airport that can refuel the chopper and has a decent hotel." The pilot replies, "Why not use the best? Because I would like to get the chopper serviced? We'll head for DIA." I giggle and ask, "Dead in action?" Everyone laughs, and Bill explains, "Denver International Airport." We get the clearance to land and begin to approach the airport. I'm looking out the window, see a monster and swear, "What the hell is that?" I point out the window to this ugly, huge blue horse with red shining eyes. It looks like some sort of devil horse from hell. The pilot laughs and replies, "That's Lucifer. Denver's football team is the Broncos, and they built him as a motivation for the team." Bill continues, "That horse is a killer. In 2006, a piece of it fell on the artist creating it and killed him. Its official name is Blue Mustang, but everyone I know calls it Lucifer for killing its artist." I complain, "That's the ugliest thing I've ever seen. Please make sure that you keep us as far away as possible from it." The pilot laughs and says, "No problem. Even the hotel we're staying at isn't close to it. By the way, they are sending a limousine to pick us up." The damn Lucifer horse keeps me distracted, but I finally realize what the pilot said, and I praise his actions. "Thank you for setting all of this up." Vic asks, "Is there any chance we have a change of gear in the chopper?" Bill replies, "Of course we do. It will be good to have you smelling like a man again." Samantha defends him. "He kept all that shit off me, so you'd better not give him a bad time." I interject, "Here are the sleeping arrangements for tonight. Bill, you and Vic share a room. The pilot gets a room of his own, and Sam and I are sharing a room." We land without problems. The hotel limousine is waiting for us and takes us to the hotel. We check in, and I mention to Sam, "You shower first, then we need to send your clothes and shoes out for cleaning." Samantha asks, "Do I smell that bad?" I shake my head no and explain, "Samantha, When you are forced to wear the same outfit 2 days in a row, you want to make sure it looks fresh. The hotel will make sure that happens. Samantha asks, what can I wear while my clothes are gone? I walk into the bathroom, pull out an expensive luxury robe, and ask, will this do? She answers, you bet, I'm going to shower. Samantha heads into the shower while I look at the map and try to figure out where Ben might be. Present, Ben, and the rest. The next morning, Ira returns from feeding Alexei and says, Alexei is ready to travel. I stand up and order, everyone load up in the truck because we're headed to the clinic for Alexei, Safia, and Zarika. Safia and Zarika begin to say something, but one look from Ira, and they shut up. I continue. I need to take care of things at the front desk. I head to the front desk and pay the concierge for the rest of the week. I have no idea what I'm going to do after this week because I'm playing this fast and loose. If I am the father of Myra's baby, well, I guess I will need to contact a lawyer. Hell no, there's no way I'm going to divorce Jens. Hell, I just married her. To be truthful, I have no idea what I will do and just want to hear all my options. The concierge asks, when will you return? I reply, we have an appointment this morning and another appointment at 3. So sometime this evening. How's your restaurant? She makes a face and says, there are better and cheaper places to eat. I will give you a list when you come back. I smile at her and reply, thanks, you've been a great help. She grins and asks, I was wondering if we could take a selfie together. I shrug my shoulders and answer, why not? She comes beside me, then puts her phone on a selfie stick, moves it away from us, and says, smile real big. She takes the picture, and I don't think anything about it as we head to the clinic. Yasmin asks, Ben, I was wondering if I might need some therapy too? I reply, other than myself, I planned on having everyone checked. Ira comments, I do not feel the need for therapy for myself, however it is a wise plan, Ben. Mira complains, Ben, I will not tolerate therapy until after we retrieve the paternity test. I didn't feel like opening this can of worms, so I don't say a word. Present, Jens and the gang. The next morning, I did drift off sometime late last night. I wake up early, look at myself in the bathroom mirror, and realize how terrible I look today. Crap, if we do find Ben today, I will probably scare him away. This was one time I wish I had some makeup. I go to Liz's room, knock on the door, and hear, just a minute. Bernie comes to the door, and I say, Bernie, I have a little emergency. He looks closely at me and says, I would say that you do. You look terrible. Come on and Liz will help you. Liz sits up in bed and remarks, it's nice to be away from the cabin so the slave driver doesn't wake us up at the crack of dawn. Liz then blinks her eyes and remarks, Jens, what the hell is wrong with your face? I cry and answer, Liz, I couldn't sleep all last night. Tom and I figured out where Ben is probably located, and we must have driven past the hotel at least a dozen times. There's a knock on the door. Tom walks into the room and says, the breakfast here is shit. I wouldn't feed it to a dog. Then he sees me and asks, damn, what happened to you? I begin to cry and say, I couldn't sleep last night. Tom hugs me and apologizes, sorry about that comment. Liz orders, all the men get out of the room now, so I can work on Jens. While you're gone, you can find a McDonald's and bring back some better food. I bite my lip and ask, Liz, can we fix this? She laughs and says, of course we can. It won't be hard at all. When I'm done with you, you will look like you did on your wedding day. Liz quickly goes to work on me. She frustrates me because she won't let me see what she's doing. Finally, she's done, holds up a mirror and asks, well, what do you think? I smile and say, Liz, you're a miracle worker. The guys show back up, and from their wolf whistles I can tell they appreciate my makeover. Tom suggests, well, let's see if I'm right about Ben's location. We all climb into the Jeep while eating our food, and Bernie cautions, don't make a mess out of my. Liz corrects, our new Jeep. Tom programs the hotel location into the GPS, and we don't take any time at all getting there. I jump out and run into the lobby. The concierge sees me and shouts, Jennifer, we didn't think we would see you. I question, why is that? She replies, well, your husband Ben told us you were busy fixing up the cabin. This confirms to me that Tom is correct and Ben is here. The concierge blushes and asks, Jennifer, would you mind if we take a selfie together? I already have one of Ben and me. I smile and answer, only if I can see the selfie of Ben first. She pulls up her camera, flips through the pictures, and sure enough, there he is, my Ben. I worry some because he looks angry. She stands close to me, puts her phone on one of those selfie sticks, and says, smile. She takes the picture, and I ask, and lie a little, we wanted to surprise Ben. Is he here? The concierge shakes her head and says, sorry, they left about an hour ago for 2 appointments, and he said he wouldn't be back until tonight. I smile and ask, do you have a room that we can temporarily have? My friend is pregnant, and I don't want to leave her in this heat. The concierge answers, sure, then she grins and says, but I bet you and Ben will stay in his room tonight. I don't have the heart to admit to her that's my hope too. I get the key for the room, head back to the Jeep, open the door, and say, Tom, you are amazing. Ben is here, but he's out doing some errands until tonight. So I got us a room to wait in. We pile out of the Jeep, pile into the room, and turn on the AC until Liz is comfortable. Tom asks, so what are the plans when Ben returns? I smile at him and answer, that's for me to know and no one else. The wait seems to be interminable. Present, Stacy and Samantha, the next day. Samantha's clothes come back perfect. She puts them on and says, Stacy, I think I'm going to mess around on the internet some. She begins to search for news items on the internet. Then she rapidly announces, Stacy, I found Ben and Jen. The bitch. I dash to the computer and ask, where? She pulls up the search and says, a concierge posted selfies with both of them. She goes to the girl's webpage and sure enough, there's Ben and the bitch. I ask, do we know which hotel? Samantha smiles and says, of course, but we're going to need a car, not the helicopter. I call Bill. We found Ben and need a vehicle to take us to the hotel. Bill replies, I will get one from the rental counter, and we will be ready to roll in 10 minutes. I'm worried crazy because the bitch is already at the hotel. What if she already sunk her claws into Ben? Present, Jens and the gang, waiting. Tom is making me nervous by constantly looking out the window, so I complain, Tom, a washed pot never boils. Tom replies, that's true, however, sometimes it's good to see a shitstorm like I've just seen before it comes. I question, Tom, what the heck are you talking about? Tom turns and announces, Jennifer, Stacy, and her team just pulled into the parking lot in a rental car. I muffle a scream and say, what the hell? How did they find Ben? Tom asks, didn't you take a picture with the concierge? I swear, son of a sea biscuit. She put it online and they found it. Come on, let's go. I'm ready to kick this biatch's rear. Tom cautions me, Jennifer, let's think before we rush off half-cocked. Stacy knows that you're here and also knows that Ben was here, and I'm sure we'll find out that he's going to return. I ask Tom, what do you suggest? Tom says, well, I don't suggest an all-out knockdown drag-out fight in the parking lot. He looks at Linus and asks, Linus, you made friends with that sheriff from Leadville, right? Linus replies, yeah, we seem to be on okay terms. Tom suggests, Linus, give him a call and all the details and ask if he can come to the hotel. Present, Ben and Ira, that evening. Damn, what a hell of a day. I don't even want to talk about it. I just want to polish off another bottle of Knob Creek and pass out. We easily admitted Alexei, Safia, Zarika, and Yasmin to the clinic. Then we went and picked up the paternity test and had to take Mira back to the clinic. In an interesting turn of events, Ira has begun to act like some sort of personal bodyguard. A man went to touch my hand at the liquor store, and she damn near broke his arm. Oh well, I can deal with her later. I pull into the hotel parking lot, see Sheriff Jim's truck, and mention to Ira, something's going on. Ira becomes instantly hypervigilant and says, do not worry, Ben, I will defend you with my life. I explain, Ira, my best friend from high school is here. He's now the sheriff of Leadville. Ira confesses, I slightly damaged one of his constabulary freeing my sister and Safia. He might not be happy to see me. I watch Jim get out of his truck, Ira and I exit my truck. I walk up to Jim and say, fancy meeting you here. Jim says, hell, it's not fancy at all. I'm here to avoid World War III. I shrug my shoulders and say, Jim, I have no idea what you're talking about. Jim becomes the sheriff by first asking, where are the others you freed from the sex traffickers? I reply, Jim, they were all a screwed up mess. I put them in a psych clinic here in Denver, which I'm paying for. Jim smiles and says, thanks for taking care of them. Now we have a highly volatile situation here to deal with. I shrug my shoulders again and say, Jim, I still don't have any idea what you're talking about. Jim points at one of the hotel rooms and says, Jennifer is in that hotel room and is in all sorts of hurt for what she did to you. Hell, I could barely keep her from crying. He points to a different hotel room and says, now Stacy Summers is in that hotel room, and she says she will do anything for you and to you. Ben, you have a decision to make, and you need to make it soon, because I don't want this erupting into a gun battle in the middle of this hotel parking lot. Both sides are armed to the teeth. I smile at Jim and say, Jim, this is the easiest choice in the world to make. Ira and I begin to walk toward Jens' room. We take about 4 steps when the door to Stacy's room opens and she threatens, Ben, if I can't have you, then no one can have you. I'm in shock when she raises one of the damn Colt pistols, which belonged to my dad. I gave her, and I don't even react. Ira, however, has no problems reacting. She dashes toward Stacy. Stacy fires the gun. Then I hear Ira let out her breath, and I know she's been hit. She gets about 5 feet from Stacy, launches into the air, catches Stacy with her extended foot in the solar plexus, and Stacy goes down like the bitch she is. Stacy's 2 men finally react, and one of them points a rifle at Ira. Ira promptly puts him on his butt and takes his rifle, then aims it at the other man. I rush over to check on Ira, and she says, "Do not worry, Ben. Stacy is a terrible shot. She only grazed me." Jim hauls to Stacy's room, arrests everyone, and says, "That young lady is going to cost you." Stacy laughs. "I'm not worried. My lawyers will get me out of this." I help Ira up, check her, and she has a big nasty grove on her right arm. I bandage her arm with my bandana, and we continue toward Yint's door. We reach the door, which is already open, and Yint says, "Ben, please come in." I walk into her room, and she looks more beautiful than I have ever seen. She shocks me when she falls to the floor, crawls to my feet, begins to cry, kiss my boots, and says, "Ben, I am so sorry for being such a biatch. I should have believed you. I don't care if Myra's baby is your child. We can adopt it if you would like." I'm shocked and I can't stand my wife acting like this, so I pull Yins to her feet, embrace her, and give her a hell of a kiss. Ira interrupts. "Ms. Blaine, do not concern yourself. Myra's child is not Ben's, and we can prove it with this paper. Myra's child was fathered by a disreputable administrator at the fertility clinic. He has fathered a huge number of children." Jennifer continues, "Ben, all I want is to grow old with you. I don't care about Mira or Ira or Stacy or anyone else." Ira sees Liz, approaches her, kneels and asks, "Ms. Morgan, for years my sister and I have served as your bodyguards. I now request a release from that commitment." Liz looks relieved, which I question, as she says, "Ira, you and your sister are released." Ira falls at Yint's and my feet and says, "Ms. Blaine, your husband performed such an unselfish act for my family by getting treatment for all of them. I feel that I must repay such kindness with my life. I am now your slave." Yint's laughs, pulls Ira to her feet, and says, "Ira, you put yourself in harm's way for my Ben, so you don't owe us anything. In fact, we would love it if you continue to stay at the cabin because I consider you part of our family." For the first time ever, I see tears trickle out of Ira's eyes. Flashback, Ben and Jack, back at the base the next day. I was rudely awakened by the sound of snoring in stereo. I recognized Jack's nasty snore, but the other was new to me, so I sat up in bed and then saw the corporal sleeping on the floor. Immediately my stomach growled and reminded me I didn't eat last night. I got out of bed, looked at the bed, and was disgusted at myself. That sure as hell wasn't a proper way to make a bed. I stripped the bed down, and was glad I did because I found a couple of used condoms on the mattress. I cleaned up the mess from the condoms, then I made a proper marine bed and tested it by bouncing a quarter on it. The quarter not only bounced on the bed, it jumped clean off the bed and hit the floor. The noise wakened Jack, and he said, "What the hell was that?" I answered, "Just testing my bed," and it passed. Jack complained, "It's a damn good thing you made that bed better because last night it looked like a train wreck." I retrieved the quarter and determined it was time for me to tweak Jack's nose a little. "Okay, I'm done with my bed. Now it's your turn." Jack grumbled, "Like hell it is. I'm on bed rest, so there's no way I need to make this bed." I jumped because there was a knock on the door. I thought it might be another nurse, then I heard, "This is Colonel Maggie. Open the door immediately." I went to the door, opened it, and Colonel Maggie walked in. She took one look at the room and announced, "Sergeant Blaine, it looks like you're the only one not gold bricking this morning. Damn nice job on your bed." I handed her the quarter I had retrieved earlier and suggested, "Would you care to test it yourself?" She handed the quarter back to me and said, "Son, these old eyes can tell just by looking it's a proper marine bed." She glared at Jack and said, "Sergeant Reynolds, what is your but still doing in bed?" Jack smiled and answered, "Sorry, Colonel Maggie, I'm on bed rest." Colonel Maggie laughed, "Like hell you are. I just talked to the doctors, and you're released for light-duty work. I have a crapload of files in my office that need to be put away." I had to bite my tongue because Jack hated filing almost as much as I did. I decided to help the old fart by offering, "Colonel Maggie, sir, if you haven't had breakfast, I would love to make you an MRE." The corporal said, "Colonel, Ben does things with an MRE that are unbelievable." Colonel Maggie looked at me and said, "Of course I haven't had breakfast. I refuse to eat the slop that the Marine they gave me as a so-called cook prepares. What choices do I have?" The corporal opened up a foot locker full of MREs and offered her a choice with a sweeping gesture. Colonel Maggie began to search through them, found a good one, and said, "Okay, let's see what you can do with the turkey tetrazzini." Jack ordered, "Ben, how about beef pot roast for me?" The corporal asked, "Ben, could I have cheese tortellini?" I smiled at the corporal and agreed, "I think I'll join you in your choice." I cleared off our rifle cleaning table, sanitized it, and went to work. The corporal watched closely and remarked, "I made some MREs for myself and Jack last night, but they weren't as good as yours." I moved to a different footlocker, pulled out a bunch of spices, some butter packets, and a bottle of wine. I looked at the extra supplies, pulled a 50 out of my pocket, handed it to the corporal, and said, It looks like we need to replenish our supplies. The corporal answered, yes, Ben, as soon as we're finished eating. If you don't mind, I'd love to watch what you're doing. I smiled at him and said, no problem. I wish I could tell you exactly what I do, but each type of MRE requires different treatment. I was ready to put them in the heaters, took a look at one heater and swore, son of a bitch. I'm glad I noticed this. Colonel Maggie asked, what's wrong? I walked over to Colonel Maggie, showed her the heater and commented, someone has screwed with this heater. If I had added the water, it would have exploded. Then I called the corporal over, showed him the modifications to the heater, and said, make sure you check every heater before you use them. He gulped and asked, would it have killed all of us? I laughed and answered, no, but it would have covered us in food. The MREs were done, so I passed them out while mine continued to heat. Colonel Maggie asked, aren't you going to eat? I smiled and said, I will after I make dessert. I finished making the recon cookies, grabbed my MRE, and asked, I haven't heard anything. How do you like your MREs? Jack answered, awesome as always. The corporal added, this is nirvana. I look at Colonel Maggie and she said, this is the best food I've eaten in a long damn time. Sergeant, it's unfortunate that you're needed elsewhere, otherwise you would be our new cook. I smiled at her and responded, very fortunate for me, because while I like doctoring MREs, I don't think I would like to be a full-time cook. I said, now for the piece de resistance. I handed everyone a recon cookie and said, enjoy your dessert. Colonel Maggie remarked, perhaps I spoke too soon. I might make you the cook anyway. I reminded her, is it easier to replace a cook or a sniper? She laughed, a cook of course, and I do think ours is going to be reassigned. In fact, Jack, I want you to start training him with the new recruits. Jack frowned and said, when is that happening? Colonel Maggie said, remember, you're on light office work this week, but next week you start to train the new recruits. By the way, if you give him hell, it won't bother me at all. I asked, so when can I get the hell out of here? Colonel Maggie says, as soon as possible, because the nurses are still fighting over you. I smiled and asked, should I gear up, and am I going back to work with George? Colonel Maggie responded, yes, you need to gear up, and you are going back to the work with who you and Jack lovingly called the Butter Bar. You're going to be his first sergeant and continue to teach him the ropes. My curiosity was piqued, so I asked, what happened to the captain? Colonel Maggie laughed and answered, by now he's probably freezing his butt off in Thule. Jack laughed and commented, it couldn't happen to a better captain. I dumped my pack on the floor and began to go through everything while Colonel Maggie ordered, Sergeant Reynolds, when are you going to get to work? Jack got out of bed and I could tell, only because I've known him so long, that his lower back was hurting. Jack replied, as soon as I take care of my necessary things. Colonel Maggie said, good, I expect to see you in the office in an hour. Sergeant Blaina SURV is leaving in 30 minutes. Make sure you're on it. I sassed, yes, sir. She threatened as she left the room. Keep it up, and you will be our new cook. I went over to Jack, handed him one of the pain pills and said, don't take so many of these this time that it makes you go crazy. He popped it in his mouth, swallowed it without water, and said, thanks, I think I have a handle on it now. I need to take them on a schedule, not just when I feel pain. I affirmed, that's correct, Jack. If you take them on a schedule, they will work better and hopefully you won't get addicted to them. I asked, how is your back? Jack said, it hurts all the time and it's not from the surgery. I tweaked Jack a little, just make sure not to carry too many files and hurt your back more. He swore, son of a bitch. I hate office work. I tossed a good handful of salt onto Jack's open complaint. Don't worry, next week you will be training recruits. He swore, damn it, Ben, don't you need to be leaving or something? I finished my pack, made sure the UOP pack was ready, checked my rifles, and said, well, you guys have fun while I'm gone. Corporal, why don't you get another cot in here so you don't have to sleep on the floor? I just hoped like hell I could make it to the SURV without being attacked by a nurse. Flashback, Masha, the next day. I began to make a healthy breakfast. We were having organic steel-cut oatmeal with raisins in it, with a lightly fried piece of ham. No more of these huge breakfasts with loads of sugar and butter. I finished as Louise came to the kitchen table, and I said, perfect timing. I set the food in front of Louise. She looked at the oatmeal and immediately asked, do you have any sugar for this? I suggested, with the raisins in it, you might find you don't need any sugar. Why don't you try it first? I am happily feeding Linda, and she obviously loved the oatmeal. I watched as Louise took a bite and commented, I'm not sure how you and Linda can eat this without extra sugar. I replied, your American taste buds have been indoctrinated to sugar because virtually every item you sell in the store has added sugar in it. At first, Linda was the same way. She wanted sweet things all the time. It took about a week, but as you can now see, Linda enjoys natural food. Louise asked warily, so I'm not getting any extra sugar today? I smiled at her and replied, that's correct, not today and not any day. And I want you to promise me that when you're at work you won't have any soda or juice drinks. Louise asked, what about diet drinks? I complained. Those are even worse. Please, Louise, listen to me and try this for 2 weeks and see if you don't feel better. Louise faked a pout and said, Auntie Masha is being mean to me. I laughed and threatened. Keep it up, and Auntie Masha will show you how really mean she can be. Now are you ready for yoga and Tebow? Louise replied, sure. I'm a little sore today, though. Should I take something for it? I gasped and said, no way. This is just your body's way of adjusting to the new routine. Louise did better on the yoga today, but worse on the Tebow. I could tell she was sore. I looked at my watch and said, well, that's it for today. Louise said, thank God. I didn't know if I could keep going. Louise kissed Linda and left. I knew I had made a small but major victory as I shifted from Tebow into real martial arts training. Major Mike took a major beating today. Flashback, Jennifer, the military academy next day. I began to answer the fire marshal when a bunch of police cars rolled onto the school property. I replied to the fire marshal, my father General Donaldson, and I locked the school staff in the cell where they held me for the night. I had planned to continue when a man in a brilliant white uniform came up and said, Ms. Donaldson, I am with the JAG, Judge Advocate General. Please delay answering any questions until we can talk in private. The fire marshal complained, but what about the corpses? The JAG smiled at me and said, if there are corpses involved, Ms. Donaldson will not answer any questions until I can interview her. I am not going to let anyone try to railroad this investigation. A detective ran up and demanded, what the hell is going on here? The JAG lawyer said, we will know more after I interview my client in private. The detective asked, who the hell is your client? I waved at him and the JAG lawyer answered, Ms. Jennifer Donaldson. He swore, shit, don't tell me this is a military situation? The JAG lawyer replied, it most certainly is. By the way, General Donaldson is also off limits for questioning until I interview him. With the arrival of the police, the other girls swarmed around the cars. The detective noticed and said, well, it looks like I have other girls I can interview. He left and began to talk with them. The JAG lawyer introduced himself. I am Colonel Clark. When I heard what was going on, I knew that you and the general would need help. It's a good thing I caught you before you said anything to the fire marshal. By the way, the detective is making a huge mistake interviewing the girls without the parents' permission, since most of what he obtains will not be admissible in court. I leaned over and said, sir, I don't think this will ever go to court. He looked at me and questioned, why is that? I said, I think the school staff immolated themselves. Colonel Clark shook his head and said, for them to resort to that drastic a measure, they must have really done some terrible things to the students. I continued, I couldn't believe what some of the girls told me. Many were being groomed to be lesbian lovers. Colonel Clark palmed his head and said, well, that would certainly be reason enough for most sane people. Tell me, were you hurt in any manner? I said, I was detained in a cell overnight, but am otherwise fine. Colonel Clark continued, did you see the immolated school staff? I affirmed, yes, I did. It was a terrible sight. Colonel Clark pulled out a legal pad and began his interview. Flashback, Alexei, back in his room. The orderly came with my sleeping pill. I took a look at it and told him, I will take this after I brush my teeth. You know how fast these work. He gave me a strange smile, and that made me immediately suspicious. I looked at the red sleeping pill and realized it had been tampered with. The blue band that sealed it closed was missing. I pulled out one of the red sleeping pills from my hidden stash of pills, went to my desk, broke the band on the known good sleeping pill, and dumped the powder on a sheet of paper. I opened the adulterated pill, dumped the powder out, and confirmed that it looked entirely different. What in heavens were the orderlies trying to do to me? If Chow Mein was still here, I would give her the powder to see what it did, but there's no way I can do that. I considered all my options and came up with a great idea. I slipped out of my room and walked cautiously to the orderly station after making sure no one was at the station. I slipped into the station's kitchen and dumped all the powder into their coffee pot. Flashback, Ira and Mira, continuing. Mira awakened and complained, Ira, remove these restraints before I become physical. We must escape Kostia. I laughed. Mira, in your sanguine depleted state, you are incapable of physical intervention. Do not worry. I have dragged your corporeal derriere into a cave where we will rest until later tonight. Mira further complained, Ira, do we possess any sustenance? I replied, no. However, I will attempt to capture a Laporte lagomorpha, which we can clean and eat. I stealthily exit the cave and began to hunt. Flashback, Todd, on the mission. The phone rings for my wake-up call, so I answer the phone, grunt into it, and I guess the caller understood. I looked at my clothes from yesterday and realized I made a huge mistake by not putting them out for cleaning before I went to bed. They are a wrinkled mess. Then I remembered they had a clothing store in the lobby. I took a shower, put on my wrinkly clothes, and headed to the clothing store. A saleslady approached. How may I help you? I pulled out a pad and wrote, I cannot speak, but I would like to get a new wardrobe because Well, this one is a mess. She laughed and said, no problem. Now what sort of wardrobe do you need? Do you need a suit? I shook my head and wrote on the pad. No, something casual but good-looking. She began to show me different shirts and pants, and we finally decided on a nice short-sleeve button-down shirt, a pair of light wool pants, and a blazer to go over the top. She suggested, if you set your current clothes out today, they should be back tomorrow, and you will have two nice outfits because the blazer goes well with both of them. I saw two other items, pointed at them, and wrote on my pad, add those to my bill, and I would like them gift-wrapped. She smiles and commented, those will make someone very happy. She began to total up the bill, and I wrote, all I have are American dollars. She stated, as long as they are $20 bills, you're fine. However, because of the high incidence of counterfeiting, no one will accept $100 bills. I smiled, handed her 3 20s, and she said, sir, that's too much. I smiled and wrote, keep the extra for your excellent service. I left the clothing store, had a quick and excellent breakfast, and waited in my room. 9 o'clock passed, and I wondered if I was being stood up, but finally my phone rings and Maria apologized. Sorry, but Gail couldn't decide what to wear today. We're waiting for you in the lobby. I grabbed my gifts, headed to the lobby, and was delighted to see both of them. Maria comments, that's a nice outfit. Did you go clothes shopping last night? I signed, no. I forgot to put my clothes out for cleaning, and they were a wrinkled mess. So I went to the shop here and bought this outfit. Gail signed, you look great, but what are those packages under your arm? I handed one to Gail and one to Maria and signed, these are gifts for my 2 favorite girls. Gail ripped hers open and signed, OMG, it's a for real silk scarf. I've always wanted one of these. She tied it over her head and began admiring herself in the mirrors. Maria took her time opening hers, looked at it, and complained, Todd, this is nice of you, however it's too much. I signed, don't be crazy, what do you mean too much? She replied, Todd, if we wore these in our neighborhood, they would be stolen from us, and we might even be killed. I suggested, well, you and Gail can wear them today, and I will figure something out for later. They took me sightseeing, but my mind was busy on how to fix this problem with their neighborhood. Present, Ben and Jens, and the rest, the next morning. Of course, Jens and I spent last night together in my room, much to the chagrin of Liz and Bernie in the next room. They kept banging on the wall all night long and complaining about the noise. Jens banged on the wall and complained right back. Hey, I had to put up with this from you too, so just shut up and enjoy the show. Their reply was to run up the television, which was fine with me. It was sure good as hell being back with my wife. I did have a shock when I opened the door in the morning since Ira had brought a chair and was sitting in front of our door. She sees me and says, my tympanic membranes inform me you and Ms. Blaine have reconciled. I am thankful for this because Mira was not correct for you. I ask, Ira, what are you doing here? She smiles and answers, I was making sure no one, especially Stacy Summers, tried to attack you during your reconciliation. It finally registers on my mind what Ira said about Mira, so I ask, why wouldn't Mira be correct for me? Ira replies, Mr. Blaine, Mira simply wanted you because you did not want her. Once you wanted her and copulated with her, she would have discarded you like outdated footwear. In a little shock, I declare, Ira, you didn't need to spend the night outside the room. Ira interrupts, Mr. Blaine, it was something which I needed to do because it is my mission. Perhaps after breakfast, might we travel to the clinic to check on the welfare of my sister and Alexi? I respond with a question, what about Yasmin, Zarika, and Safia? I go in further shock when she replies, to Hades with them. Their dalliances with Alexei precipitated our capture by Boris the sex trafficker. That reminds me of a question which had bothered me. Just how exactly was Boris able to capture skilled operators like you and Mira? Ira scoffed. Mira was so great with the illegitimate child-dreaded fetus that she was no longer a prime operative. Mr. Blaine, I am ashamed to say they simply divided us and conquered us. They forced us to strip off our body armor and come through the door one person at a time. Upon our entry, they tasered us. I was able to defeat the first taser attack, but not the second. That does remind me that I believe the sheriff has our katanas. Would it be possible for you to reclaim them for us? I smile at Ira and reply to everything. Of course we will check on Mira, Alexei, and the others after breakfast. Let me give Jim a call and see about getting the katanas back, but you might have to face charges for what you did to his deputy. Ira simply replies, Mr. Blaine, we have diplomatic passports and therefore will face no criminal charges. Jens comes to the door wrapped in the sheets from the well-used bed and asks, Ben, who are you talking to? I look at her and marvel that she looks so beautiful in the morning and reply, Ira spent all night in a chair outside the door to protect us. Jens asks, Ira, aren't you tired? Ira replies, no, Ms. Blaine, I require very little sleep. I inform Jens, after breakfast Ira would like to go to the clinic and check on Mira and Alexei. Jens gets some fire in her eyes as she says, yeah, I would like to have a little talk with Zarika and Yasmin about the cabin. Yinz then suggests, Ben, my love, if you don't mind, I would like a shower before breakfast. I order Ira. Ira, please go to your room and get some sleep. She complies. Yinz and I head into the shower, and I never realized showers could be so much fun. Present, Liz and Bernie. The next day, Liz rolls over in the bed and complains, Bernie, those two practically drove me crazy last night. Bernie laughs and says, yeah, it was sort of like us before the doctor told us no more sex. Liz pleads, Bernie, I know we can't have sex, but couldn't you at least? And Bernie certainly did. Present, Samantha, news stories. It was terrible doing the video on Stacy as she shot Ben. Thank God Ira was there and protected Ben. I wasn't sure how Stacy's craziness was going to affect our relationship, but there were other concerns for me right now. I needed to cover Ben and Jennifer getting back together. We stayed in the room Stacy rented. Once the sheriff and Denver police searched the room to make sure law enforcement had all the weapons. I had no idea, but Bill and crew had a small arsenal of weapons in the room. I was able to convince the police and Sheriff Jim that Vic had no idea what Stacy was going to do. So he wasn't arrested with Stacy and Bill, but they did take all his weapons. Vic assured me, Miss Stevens, don't worry. Since they didn't take my hands, I can still protect you. It was a good thing we kept the room because all the other Denver news crews took every remaining room. I wasn't worried about them because Jennifer adored the way I covered her wedding, so I was sure she would pay more attention to me. I had John take some pictures of Irina as she sat outside of Ben and Jennifer's room in a chair all night. It seemed strange until Vic explained she was their bodyguard, and bodyguards do things like that. The door opened briefly and Ben, Irina, and even Jennifer had some discussions. Then Irina left and went back to her room. I looked at John and asked, are we ready for this? John says, of course. I'm just not sure how we will get close enough to interview them when there are already so many reporters standing around. Vic replies, don't worry about that. That's my job. I check my clothes and makeup and say, okay guys, let's make our way to their door. We leave the room toward the throng of reporters waiting by the door. Vic leads the way and loudly announces, move to the side, official business. Amazingly, it works until one reporter from Coosa refuses. Hey, I know you. You're Samantha Stevens from the Truth Network. What's this official business we need to move for? Vic growls, Ms. Stevens is the official reporter for Jennifer Blaine. Don't you remember how she was the only reporter allowed at her wedding? Now please step aside, and we might let you share our video. I was shocked that Vic knew so much about things, but I guess he must have studied some before he came to work for me. The Coosa reporter talked with the rest of her crew and agrees. Okay, we will move if we get second rights to the video. I get ready to answer and present, Bernie and Liz, the next day. Bernie looks out the window and reports, Liz, every news station in Denver must be here. I hopefully ask, is Samantha and the Truth Network here? Bernie says, yeah, they're arguing with that Arakawa reporter from Coosa. I decide it's time for me to make my grand entrance. Yes, we had time yesterday to visit several boutique maternity shops, so I looked, and from what Bernie did earlier, felt great. I forcefully open the door, step out into the frenzy, and announce, pregnant woman coming through. That statement works almost as well as Moses parting the Red Sea. I walk up to where Samantha and the Coosa bitch are arguing and demand, what the hell is going on here? Samantha blinks a few times. I can tell she is impressed with my outfit, and says, Ms. Arakawa wants second broadcasting right to our report. I smile at Adele and say, sorry Adele, but you've refused to play ball with us a few too many times to make that sort of demand. Everyone knows that Jennifer Blaine is part owner of the Truth Network and that she gives us all the exclusives. So if you want to even see the video, move out of the way. Adele begins to get huffy. I see a Denver police officer and motion to him. As he comes over, I explain the situation to him, and he orders, everyone except the Truth Network move back from the hotel door. They begin to complain that the officer can't do that. Tom walks out of his room and says, while he might not have the jurisdiction to do that, I certainly do. You have two choices, either move back the required distance or vacate the premises. Someone asks, and who the hell are you to tell me to do that? Tom has a side discussion with the Denver officer after which he takes the man into custody, and in a surprise move Tom announces, I work for the U.S. Marshals Service. Now does anyone else have problems we need to deal with? Everyone quickly moves back, so I stand beside Samantha and say, do your best. Samantha asks, you aren't doing the report? I smile at her and reply, no, this is your baby. You do all the reports on Ben and Jennifer. I argue, but Liz, you look great. Liz interrupts. Thank you. After seeing your updated wardrobe, I figured the Truth Network needed a little more professional look. Present, Ben and Yinz, coming out of the room. Ben looks out the window and says, Yinz, it's a zoo out there. The whole parking lot is full of reporters. I giggle and ask, Do you see the Truth Network? Ben answers, yeah, they're the closest to the door. Jens says, just a minute more, and we can meet our adoring fans. But we're only talking to the Truth Network. Ben takes a big swig of Knob Creek, and I suggest, now you need to brush your teeth. He takes another swig and says, now I will brush my teeth. I take one more look at me in the mirror, decide I like what I see, and say, come on, Ben. This isn't going to hurt. Ben is beside me as I fling open the door, see Samantha, and say, Sam, it's so good to see you and everyone else here today. Many reporters are yelling at us, but I just ignore them. Samantha begins the interview. Good morning, America. This is Samantha Stevens from the Truth Network. We are here with Mr. and Mrs. Blaine. Tell me, please, is there any truth that you two are already having marital problems? I laugh and reply, well, we're here together talking to you this morning after a great night. So what do you think? I see Liz smirk at the great night comment. Samantha continues, so the report of you cutting your honeymoon. I interrupt. Sam, as you know, our cabin was destroyed in a maliciously set fire. That caused us to cut our honeymoon short so we could get to work on its repair. Sam asks a hard question, and the report of Ben fathering a child with another woman? I prepare to answer, but don't need to. Present, Ira and Tom, the defense. When I hear the question about Myra's baby, I walk forward and announce, my sister Miranda never carried Mr. Blaine's child. And because we are twins, I know they never even copulated. I will physically challenge anyone that spreads this false rumor. I fall back into a defensive martial arts position while the crowd of reporters start to mumble among themselves. Tom shocks me when he walks over, places his arm around me, and says, I also personally know that to be true. He leans over and tells me, Ira, in America you never threaten a group of reporters, no matter how idiotic they are. Present, Samantha and Liz, the interview. I continue with the interview. So what are your plans now? Jens looks at Ben. Ben looks at Jens and Ben blurts, I thought we might finish our honeymoon in Disneyland. Everyone laughs. Ben holds up his hand and says, sorry, but we're really hungry, so we're going to eat now. Samantha, can we finish this interview later? The crowd of reporters yell questions after them as they walk toward the dining room, and Samantha finishes. There you have it, America. Jennifer and Ben and their marriage are fine. And the many terrible rumors of Ben fathering a child with another woman are false. However, there are some men who are watching that could care less about the report and are more concerned with Ben Blaine. As the reporters leave, they leave in a different direction. Liz comes over to me after the report and praises my work. Excellent job, Sam. How did you know about the other woman question? I smile at Liz and say, Liz, you must have been out of touch since it has been all over the news how Ben broke the women out of the sex trafficker's prison because one of them was carrying his child. Liz smiles and says, well, I guess Ira and Tom put that question to bed forever. Tom walks over and says, I sure hope so. I reach in my bag, pull out a tabloid, hand it to Liz, and say, possibly not. Tom looks over Liz's shoulder as she reads it and sees the picture on the front page. It's Ben with the whole group of women that look like refugees. She swears, which son of a bitch took this picture? Tom says, yeah, I want that son of a bitch. I say, I think you mean daughter of a bitch. Look at the tagline on the picture. I read it and swear even more. That little bitch. I think it's the hotel concierge. Come on, John. We have our own interview to perform. Tom says, I want in on this too. John, Liz and Tom head into the hotel lobby as I tag along to watch. Liz walks up to the desk and the concierge asks, how may I help you? Liz motions to John. John turns on the camera and Liz rips into her. Vanessa, are you by chance the same Vanessa that took this picture? Liz holds up the tabloid. Vanessa has yet to realize she's in deep trouble and brags. Yes, I took that picture the very first day Ben Blaine came here with that huge group of women who looked like refugees. I wait and Liz drops the bomb. Vanessa, you're being interviewed for the record. What is the policy of this hotel on the video disclosure of information about its paying guests? Vanessa realizes she's in trouble and tries to backpedal. I was just letting America see the sort of man that Ben Blaine really is. Tom begins to talk. John tracks him with the camera as he says, I notice you have the television on, and it's on the Truth Network. So that means you saw Samantha's interview along with Irina and my proof that the accusation is false. How do you feel about it now? Vanessa makes the mistake of saying, well then what was he doing with all those women? It had to be something scandalous. Tom continues, they are all friends of his whom he freed from the sex traffickers' cells. He didn't want them to face the media scrutiny the others did, so he took them and placed all of them into a rehabilitation clinic. Now hold out your hands. You're under arrest. Vanessa fights, what? You can't arrest me. I didn't do anything wrong. Tom laughs, like hell I can't. I'm a U.S. Marshal, and to begin with I'm arresting you for invasion of privacy for the picture. I will probably add to it, inciting a riot for the commotion you've caused in the parking lot and hotel today. Tom pulls out some handcuffs, walks up to her, and says, We can do this the easy way or the hard way. She holds out her hands as he puts the cuffs on her. Liz clears her voice. John pans the camera back to her, and she says, "Not only that, once your superiors see this report, I'm sure you will lose your job and never work in the hotel industry again." Tom walks her outside, and the Denver police are still there. They see him with her in custody, so one walks over to him. They exchange a few words and Vanessa is taken away in a police car. Liz laughs. "We have yet one more exclusive all the other stations have missed. They so are busy trying to talk to Ben and Jennifer they missed it all. By the way, Samantha, good catch on the tagline." We head into the hotel dining room and find total mayhem. The other news teams are trying to talk to Ben and Jennifer, and they are totally oblivious to everything except each other. It's so damn cute. Jens is sitting on Ben's lap. They are looking deep into each other's eyes, feeding each other, with lots of giggling and a bit too much sexual innuendo on Jennifer's part, especially when Ben would feed her a sausage. She pretends, "Well, I don't need to explain." Tom looks at them and says, "Now that's a couple that belongs together. I almost hate to do this, but it's my duty." Tom walks over to the table and shows the tabloid with its picture to them. John has our camera rolling, as do all the other stations. Jennifer looks at the tabloid and remarks, "Ben did such a good thing getting our friends and family out of the sex traffickers' prison. I'm so glad we were able to get them into a great rehabilitation clinic." She pauses for a second, then continues, "It's a shame that all the women and the few men that were in that terrible prison can't receive the same care." She looks at the camera and continues, "Perhaps someone could set up a page to fund their treatment?" Tom announces, "Ben and Jennifer, just so you know, the hotel concierge took this picture and has been arrested for invasion of privacy and whatever other charges I deem proper to add to it." Jennifer surprises the hell out of us when she says, "Pooh. Pooh on that, Tom. She was just trying to make a quick $1 or $2. I would appreciate it if you released her, since it's good to have documentation of how bad everyone looked, so we can reflect on it someday and see how far they've come." Ben notices Ira and says, "Jens, the love of my life. We have a promise to keep." Jennifer gives Ben a huge kiss and says, "Whatever, my love, shall we go?" Ben looks at Tom and requests, "Tom, it would be nice if you could keep the news crews, other than the Truth Network, from annoying us." The other crews begin to complain, and Liz says, "Any attempt to follow them or any continued complaints will eliminate you from receiving our reports." They shut the hell up. Ben, Jens, and Ira walk out of the dining room while no one attempts to follow them, and they are gone. Liz turns to me and says, "Samantha, I think it's time that we make some changes in the station." I ask, "What are you thinking about, Liz?" Liz grins at me and says, "I sort of thought that we should talk to the other owners and see about making you a part owner of the station." I gasp, "Liz, please don't tease me." Liz hugs me and says, "Samantha, I'm not. But it's going to take the agreement of myself, Bernie, Ben, and Jens. I don't see there being any problem at all. We'll get started on it this next week." I bite my lip and say, "Liz, there's a report that I'm not sure how to air. For right now, it's just a video." Liz declares, "Where's John? Let's take a look at it." We find John and I ask, "John, can we see the video from last night?" He asks, "Are you really sure you want to see that?" Liz replies, "John, show us the damn video." I watch as Ben, accompanied by Ira, walks toward Jennifer's room. Stacy opens the door and yells, "Ben, if I can't have you, then no one can have you." She raises a pistol and points it at Ben. Ben stands there like he can't believe what is happening as Ira runs toward Stacy. She fires the gun and obviously hits Ira, but Ira continues and takes down Stacy along with the 2 other men with her. Liz looks at me and says, "Wait, isn't this guy who's been following you one of the 2 men taken down by Ira?" Vic looks down and confesses, "Yes, ma'am. I am ashamed to say I am, and even more ashamed that a woman took me down." Liz laughs and says, "Hell, you're lucky she didn't kill all 3 of you. She used to be my bodyguard. She and her sister were known as the Angels of Death." Vic looks up and comments, "I have heard legends about them, and you're right, ma'am. I seem to be very fortunate." Liz asks, "So why have you been following Samantha all day?" Samantha replies, "Well, Liz, before Stacy went crazy, I sort of hired Victor as my bodyguard. But with Stacy gone, I'm not sure." I interrupt, "Samantha, you know having a bodyguard for you is a great idea. I've always been concerned about your safety." Liz looks at Vic and asks, "How much is she paying you?" Vic says, "Room and board for my family and myself, and $20,000 a year." Liz thinks for a moment and then offers, "Victor, how about you continue working as Samantha's bodyguard, but we put you on the Truth Network payroll, which means you also receive health insurance. Oh, and we're going to increase your salary to $30,000 a year." Vic looks down and says, "That's a generous offer, but I'm not sure I can live on that in New York." Liz laughs and continues, "Vic, that was a test, and you just passed. Of course you can't live on $30,000 in New York, but we're moving some of the operations to Leadville, Colorado, seeing that's where Bernie and I are going to raise our little one. So how about we make it $40,000 a year and a house in Leadville? Vic actually has tears in his eyes as he asks, "You would do that for me?" Liz answers with a question, "Would you protect Samantha with your life?" Vic looks at her and instantly replies, "Of course, that's my job." Liz says, "Then you're hired." She turns to me and says, "Samantha, I realize the position this puts you in with Stacy since she's your best friend and you don't want to do anything that would jeopardize that friendship. But this report needs to be shown, so I will do the report and you can tell Stacy it was my decision." I ask, "Do you think she will go to jail for this?" Liz laughs and says, "Samantha, rich people never go to jail." I feel much better that things have been settled with Vic and with the video of Stacy. Flashback, Ben, leaving the base. Even though it was hotter than hell, I pulled my military skull mask up over my lower face in hopes that the nurses wouldn't recognize me. It worked like a charm, and I safely made it to the SURV docks without being accosted. I walked up to the officer in charge of the docks and reported, "Colonel Maggie sent me here. I'm supposed to be taken back to Lieutenant George, and I believe he's still at the hospital." He took one look at my mask and laughed. "Hell, that will scare the shit out of the scumsuckers." I offered, "It's yours if you want it. I was just wearing it to avoid any complications with the nurses." He laughed even harder and said, "Hell, you're Sergeant Blaine. Let me shake your hand." I asked, "What the hell did I do?" The officer of the dock leaned closer and said, "We've been trying to get the nurses in bed for months with no luck. You show up, give, I can't believe the number, 20 of them a good banging, and now it's like they're all hot to trot. So, you're a hero on this base. You want dock number 3, and thanks for offering, but why don't you keep the mask?" I headed over to dock number 3, climbed in the SURV, and it left immediately. I was happy as hell to be off the base again and hoped to not return anytime soon. Flashback, Jack, office work. I couldn't believe it. For being such a great officer, Colonel Maggie's office was a disaster zone. It looked like Dorothy and the tornado landed in the middle of her office and took up permanent residence. Colonel Maggie ordered, "Start on the pile over there and put them in the first file cabinet." I came up with what I thought was a brilliant idea. I began by picking up an armload of files and acting like they slipped out of my hands. Colonel Maggie didn't even look up from her work as she continued with a new order. "Jack, you're going to have to try harder than that to make me think you can't do this work. Now pick up the mess you made and make sure each file is in the proper folder." Son of a bitch. How did she know? This time Colonel Maggie looked up at me and said, "Jack, I know you hate the idea of filing. That's how I know you did that on purpose. Now don't try that shit on me again, or I will put you on latrine duty." Hell, latrine duty was the worst duty of all. I continued filing with a much better attitude. Colonel Maggie looked at her watch and said, "Good. The corporal will be here with our lunch soon." About 10 minutes later, the corporal showed up with 3 MREs. He began by apologizing. "Sorry, I tried to do everything Ben did, but they didn't turn out the same." Colonel Maggie said, "Don't worry, son. Anything is better than what that so-called cook made today." The corporal said, "Yes, sir. Some of the Marines were already puking in the garbage cans." He handed out the MREs. I took a taste and praised his work. "Hey, this is pretty damn good." Colonel Maggie tasted hers and added, "Yeah, I like what you did to this. Good job, Corporal." The corporal looked at the ground and shyly asked, "Colonel Maggie, I really enjoyed making the MREs, so I was wondering if it would be possible for me to try to cook a whole meal?" I added, "Hell, he only has to do as well as the current cook, and that's not much." Colonel Maggie wisely suggested, "Corporal, why don't we send you back to HQ and let you apprentice as a cook?" He smiled and said, "Gosh, ma'am, you'd really do that for me." Colonel Maggie looked at me and asked, "Okay, Sergeant, where are those transfer orders?" I knew right where they were, pulled one out of the filing cabinet, and handed it to Colonel Maggie. She filled it out, handed it to the corporal, and ordered, "What are you waiting for? Get moving and make sure they don't keep you because I want you to come back here." He thanked her multiple times as he walked out the door. Then she looked at me and said, "Well, shit. What are we going to do about an aide for you and Sergeant Blaine?" I suggested, "Do you have another corporal handy?" Colonel Maggie replied, "Yeah, I have almost too many of them. I will figure one out for you and let you know who it is." I liked the hell out of this corporal, and I sure hope she found someone just as good. Flashback, Masha, the next day. I was happy with the way Linda responded to the change in diet, as the largest problem was the hidden sugars in most of the American foods. I taught myself to be an expert looking for them. The easy part was that most of the hidden sugars ended in os, fructose, sucrose, dextrose, maltose, but the tricky one was HFCS, high fructose corn sweetener. The more I read about it, the less I liked it. While some scientists even claimed it was just like sugar, if you looked at the studies which found beneficial effects, they were funded by the people who grew corn that made the HFCS. I went through the cabinets of food that Louise brought How and came up with 2 big bags of groceries for her to return to the store. I hoped she could get a refund. While it was convenient for her to do that shopping, until I could wean Louise off her sugar addiction, I would need to do all the shopping. One of the things that amazed me the most was the baby food. No, there wasn't sugar in most of them, but the first and primary ingredient in most of them was water. I loaded up another whole bag of nothing but baby food. Linda would eat what we ate, or I would teach Louise how to can our own baby food. I decided to start dinner. Tonight, we would have a roast with potatoes, carrots, and little onions. Jack called it Yankee pot roast, and it was one of his favorites. Linda was down for her nap, so it was the perfect time to start the meal. I cleaned and lightly seasoned the meat, put it into a big pan, cleaned all the vegetables, placed them nicely around the meat, added some hot water, and put it in the oven. In a few hours, it should be great. Louise should be coming home just about the time the roast was ready. I wasn't sure if she was bringing Brenda and Gwen, but if she did, there was enough food for them also. I hoped she asked Michael today to help her move out of her apartment and into the house. Linda began to coo, so I knew she was awake. I slipped my head around the corner. She saw me, and I said, "Boo" in Russian. She giggled, so we played this little game for a few minutes. I finally picked her up, changed her diaper, which was not nearly as bad now that she didn't eat sugar, and took her into the living room. She pointed to the television and cooed, but I replied, "No television for you. Not until we read some books." I brought out some of her favorite books, and we began to work on her language skill. Even though Louise had not given me permission, I had decided to teach Linda both English and Russian. Finally, we heard keys in the front door. Louise walked in and commented, "You two look like you're having fun." Linda points at Louise and said, "Mama." Louise dropped everything on the floor, ran over, and said, that was her first word. I didn't have the heart to tell her that Linda had been talking for about a week. Louise picked up Linda and smothered her in kisses. Then she remarked, "What smells so good?" I replied, "Dinner. We are having one of Jack's favorite meals, Yankee pot roast." Louise looked a little guilty and asked, "Masha, I hope you don't mind, but Brenda and Gwen are coming over." I told them about the T-bow, and they wanted to try it after dinner. I smiled at Louise and said, "That's great. I made enough food for all of us." Then Louise noticed all the bags on the counter and asked, "What's all that?" I replied, "Food that I want returned to the store. I hope you can get a refund." She laughed and said, "No problem with that since I work there." "What's wrong with the food?" I replied, "Too much sugar or fat, and did you know all the baby food's primary ingredient is water?" Louise sounded amazed and answered, "I had no idea." "So what will we feed Linda?" I presented my solution. "We can put everything into the blender and she can eat our food since that's what we did in Russia." Gwen and Brenda showed up. I greeted them and looked forward to more T-bow tonight. Flashback, Jennifer, the military academy next day. Colonel Clark asked, "What forced your father to enroll you here?" I told him the whole story. He laughed when I got to the part about Vampira and then commented, "It sounds like you two have a few issues to work on." I confessed, "I really hate being called a princess." Colonel Clark suggested, "Jennifer, I think that someday you really will be someone's princess." He made me think of Ben, so I began to daydream. He quickly brought me back to reality with a request. "Tell me about the fight you had with the 2 upper-class girls." I explained everything to him about how I was really just defending myself and how I was sure they were forcing some of the other girls to perform disgusting sexual acts on them. Colonel Clark asked me next about the cell. "Tell me about the cell they locked you in." Again, I explained everything to him, even how I could climb up the wall and how I dismantled parts of the bed for weapons. He became extremely interested when I told him. I heard the women coming to get me, and they were laughing about how they were going to teach me a lesson. It scared me, so I climbed up the wall, waited for them, and then attacked them when they entered the cell. Colonel Clark asked, "So they didn't attack you first, you initiated the attack?" I replied, "Yes, because I was frightened by what they said they were going to do to me." "Sir, am I in trouble for this?" Colonel Clark answered, "Probably not since they immolated themselves. Who in the hell could sue you? Besides, once the activities at this school are exposed, my guess is you will become some sort of hero." I cried a little and sighed. "All I want to do is go back home." Colonel Clark said, "Let me go interview your father, and I'm sure you will be going home today." That was the best news I had heard in a very long time. Now, if Daddy would just stop calling me princess, life would be great. Flashback, Alexei, back in his room. It was early morning, and it sounded like there was a fight outside my room. I slowly slipped to my door, cracked it slightly open, and looked into the hallway. The 2 night orderlies were acting crazy and fighting with each other. Many other orderlies arrived, and they all began to fight each other. Some were yelling about seeing rainbows, and others were just angry as Hades. I closed my door and locked it as the noise of the fight grew worse. Finally, the klaxon that signals to exit the building sounded, but there was no way I was leaving my room. Flashback, Ira and Mira, continuing. How in Hades did my sister Mira receive her injury, And why did she withhold that data from me? My sister had been acting most peculiarly lately, not at all like her normal sane self. I received fortune of good and located a Laporte lagomorpha drinking at a stream. I launched a stone at the Laporte lagomorpha, thereby terminating it. I cleansed it at this location instead of inside the cave, then discarded the entrails into the stream, knowing the fish will enjoy them. With a flash of insight, I then formulated another good notion. I retrieved some of the entrails, fashioned a hook from a safety pin, tied it on a string, and began to fish. Give a woman a fish, and she will eat one meal. Teach a woman to fish, and she will never go hungry. It did not take long until I had procured a fine bunch of fish. I locomoted back to the cave, approached it with care, made sure there were no unknown boot prints, which there were not, and slowly slipped into the cave. I was surprised by the actions of my sister Mira. Flashback, Todd, on the mission. The fact that Maria and Gail lived in such an unsafe neighborhood, where they could be mugged and possibly killed for a silk scarf, has put a damper on today's festivities. Gail, being the more sensitive one, picked up on it and signed, "Todd, are you not enjoying yourself?" I lied and signed, "No, I'm having a great time." Then an idea finally comes to me, and I continued, "It's so nice here, I was just considering buying a place of my own to live. I could go and do my work, then come back and live in this idyllic place." Maria laughed. "I would hardly call this place idyllic. You haven't seen the bad areas." I replied and signed, "No, I haven't, but I'm sure there are neighborhoods that are nice where mostly Americans live." Gail signed, "Of course there are, but we sure couldn't live there." I grinned at her and signed, "Why the hell not? If I bought a place, I would need someone to look after it while I was gone." Maria complained, "Todd, is this some sort of plan for you to get sex from me?" I grinned to show I was teasing and signed, "Gee, I didn't think it would come with that amenity." Gail giggled and signed, "I knew it. Sooner or later you two were going to do the deed." Maria blushed and said, "Todd, I'm not that sort of woman." I grinned at her and signed, "Maria, I know that, but I am also a serious man. I am considering buying a place here, and I would need someone to watch it while I was gone. However, if you and Gail don't." Gail grabbed my hands, stopped me from signing, then signed her reply. "Todd, you're crazy. Of course we would love to watch a place for you if you bought it." "Well, at least I am. If my sister is too afraid, then I will watch it for you." Maria complained, "Gail, you're too young to take care of yourself." Gail stuck out her tongue and signed, "Well, I've made up my mind, so you can either stay in our old crummy apartment by yourself or stay with me at Todd's new place." Gail giggled and continued, "And Todd, if Maria is too much of a prude for you, I might consider having sex with you. You are kind of hot in an older sort of way." Maria turned red and actually swore, "Dios mío. Gail, I should spank you for that. You know that you've never." Gail held up her hands. Maria stopped, and Gail signed, "Never what? Are you sure about that?" I needed to get things back on track, so I asked, "Maria, do you know a realtor?" Maria answered, "Yes, we have one at the bank." "Todd, are you sure about this?" I smiled at her and signed, "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Maria called the realtor, described to her what I wanted, and said, "We are going to meet her in an hour at the bank." I inwardly smiled, knowing I had a good solution for this problem. Present, Ben, Jens, and Ira, visiting the clinic. Jens is practically sitting in my lap as we drive to the clinic while I ask Ira, "How is your arm this morning?" Jens asks, "What happened to Ira's arm?" Ira replies, "Ms. Summers grazed my arm as she shot at Ben last night." Jens practically goes ballistic as she complains, "Why in the frackin' heck wasn't I told? Ben, can they treat her arm at this clinic?" I reply, "I suppose they can." Jens orders, "Irina, never hide an injury, even a minor one, from me again." Ira responds, "Yes, Ms. Blaine." We arrive at the clinic, rush inside, and Jens takes charge. She rushes Ira up to a desk and asks, "Can you treat the wound on this woman's arm?" The nurse begins to waffle until I walk up and ask, "How are our patients doing today? If possible, we would like to consult with the doctor and see them." She recognizes me and apologizes, "Sorry, I didn't know who this woman was." I inform her, "This is my lovely wife, Jennifer Blaine. Now can you treat this woman's arm, and can we consult with the doctor?" The nurse again apologizes, "Sorry, Ms. Blaine, I didn't recognize you. Yes, we will treat this woman's injury immediately, and I will call the doctor and inform him you are here." Jens looks at me and whispers, "How do you rate?" I laugh and answer, "Money talks, and for what we're paying for the treatment here, we're entitled to substantial respect." As Ira's arm gets treated, I watch and see it's not too bad and is already healing some. The nurse remarks, "This looks like a gunshot wound." I confirm her observation, "That's correct. You are welcome to call the police, however they already have the perpetrator in custody." Ira directs our attention. "Look, there it is on the television." We watch as Liz reports on Stacy going crazy. She shoots at me and Jens gasps, "Ira, you really saved Ben's life." Ira quietly replies, "Yes, Ms. Blaine, that is my duty." The doctor finally arrives, calls us into an office, and Ira asks, "How are my sister Miranda and brother Alexei?" I feel uneasy as the doctor shakes his head and says, "Miranda has decided she wants an abortion." She looked over the DNA results more closely and noticed the fetus has some genetic abnormalities. Alexei is gradually responding to the treatments, but is still anally fixated and his hands must be restrained at all times. Ira asks, "Doctor, do you recommend the abortion for Miranda?" The doctor frankly says, "Normally I would not recommend it, but after looking at the DNA results and Miranda's extreme loathing of the fetus, I feel in this case it's justified and will help in her healing." Jens asks, "Doctor, how soon can the abortion be performed?" The doctor answers, "We can do it today if you would like." Iris says, "First I would like to converse with my sister. If she feels strongly about this, I would like it done immediately." Jens surprises the hell out of me when she requests, "Doctor, would it be possible for me to watch the abortion?" The doctor appears taken aback and answers, "Ms. Blaine, I thought you hated this woman because of the problems she caused in your marriage." Jens laughs and confesses, "Doctor, Mira didn't cause the problems in our marriage, I did. This is going to be traumatic for Mira, so I would like to be in the operating room so I can lend her my support." Ira says, "Ms. Blaine, that would be a wonderful act and might even aid in my sister's healing." The doctor suggests, "Ira should be in the operating room too." Ira states, "Of course, doctor, my sister will not face this trial unaccompanied." Ira leaves to talk with Mira while the doctor asks, "Are you concerned with your other residents here?" I know better than to let Jens reply, so I quickly say, "Yes, we are." "How are Safia, Zarika, and Yasmin doing?" The doctor answers, "Zarika is doing the best, but then that's to be expected because of the past life you saved her from. Yasmin is dealing with the trauma of not only the sex traffickers, but the fact that she was previously sedated and assaulted. Safia's main concern is Alexei, but right now we can't let the two of them interact." Jens pipes up, "Doctor, I would like to have a very frank discussion with Yasmin and Zarika about the destruction of our cabin." The doctor refuses, "Ms. Blaine, we cannot allow that. So far we haven't even discussed that issue with them. To force it on them in their mental state would be like torturing them. They are like fragile flowers which must be cared for." Jens explodes, "Fragile flowers, my derriere. Those fragile flowers burned down our cabin, stole my picture of Ben, and left a turd on my pillow. I'm still not sure whether to make them work it off or just let them go to jail." I attempt to bring reason to the table. "Jens, my love, please trust me, there will come a time when they pay for their sins." Jens calms down, smiles at me, and says, "Of course, Ben, I trust you totally and always will." There's a knock on the door. Ira returns and says, "My sister Miranda is eagerly awaiting the abortion." The doctor looks at me and asks, "Mr. Blaine, would you care to observe?" I, perhaps too vehemently, refuse, "No thank you. I will sit out in the waiting room." Jens squeezes my hand and says, "Don't you want to practice for when we have our babies?" I sputter, "Our babies, I thought that." Jens shuts me up with a kiss, then winks at me and says, "Ben, you never know what miracles can happen." I am practically in shock as I head for the waiting room. Present, Mira, Jens, and Ira, the procedure. I cannot wait to have this vile creature removed from my body. To have been so duped by the administrator of the fertility clinic peeved me to the extent that my only enjoyable thoughts were the memories of his demise. The doctor comes into the room and announces, "Miranda, we are going to have 2 observers helping you today." My sister Ira walks in. Then I cannot believe it when Jennifer Donaldson walks into the room behind her. I start to complain, and Ira interrupts, "My sister Miranda, we have terminated our contract with Elizabeth Morgan and now work for Mr. and Ms. Blaine. Ms. Blaine is here to show her support during your time of stress." Ira gave me a stern look and ordered, "My sister, please do not obliterate this opportunity of golden." Jennifer Donaldson takes over. I look at Mira and say, "Mira, your sister Ira saved Ben's life when Stacy Summers shot at him. I would like to return the favor by being here to help you." I look at the doctor and ask, "Doctor, is it agreeable if I hold Myra's right hand while Ira holds Myra's left hand?" The doctor asks, "You two aren't squeamish about blood, are you?" I reply, "I'm fine with it." Ira answers, "Doctor, women are never squeamish about blood since we deal with it monthly." I take Myra's right hand. Ira takes her left hand, and the doctor motions to the anesthesiologist. He begins to put Mira to sleep, and now it's my turn to do my work. I'm not sure if I still have any power, but now is a good time to find out. Ira feels somewhat strange. I am undergoing a strange feeling that I have never experienced before. I look over at Ms. Blaine, and she appears to be in a trance while she mouths words which I cannot comprehend. The strange feeling seems to be an energy which I have never felt flowing from Ms. Blaine, through my sister, and into me. A peace I have never previously felt washes over me, and I relish embracing the total peace and relaxation. The next thing I know, the doctor announces, "We're finished." I've never had one of these go so smoothly and easily. He also adds, it's a good thing she decided to have the abortion because the fetus was very malformed. Ms. Blaine asks, can we stay with Mira in the recovery room? The doctor approves, so we move into the recovery room with Mira. We take her hands, and once again, I have the feeling. I slowly wake into a feeling of calmness, peace, and relaxation. I ask, is it over? My sister Ira says, yes, Mira, it is over. I stutter, Ira. Ira. I feel. Ira interrupts. Yes, my sister Mira, I feel it too. She leans over and whispers, I think it is emanating from Ms. Blaine. I whisper in reply, Ira, could she be a? Ms. Blaine shushes us. I need to concentrate, so please stop talking. A nurse realizes I am awake, comes over and asks me, Miranda, are you in pain? I honestly reply, no ma'am, I experience no pain whatsoever. She shakes her head and says, that's strange because usually there is an extreme amount of pain. Ms. Blaine finally opens her eyes, smiles at me, and says, it's all over, Mira. I am sorry for your loss, but from what the doctor told us, the fetus was much damaged. She continues, well, now that I'm done, I need to see Ben since he is worried about you, Mira. Ms. Blaine leaves. The nurse comes back over and again asks, Miranda, do you have any pain? I again reply, I have no pain. She presses on my stomach, which is now smaller and wrinkled looking, and says, how about if I do this? I reply, no, I do not experience any pain. She shakes her head and says, well, you must be the luckiest woman in the world because usually the patients are screaming for as many pain medications as we can give them. Ira leans over and says, we have to express gratitude in the direction of Ms. Blaine for this. I agree. Yes, we must thank Ms. Blaine. When I call her Ms. Blaine, it is as if a light illuminates above my cranium, and I finally understand. Jennifer and Ben are meant to be together. The doctor comes in and asks, Mira, the nurse tells me you don't need any pain medication. Are you sure? I smile at the doctor and reply, sir, I'm not experiencing any pain. He writes in his notes and comments, this is one of the strangest procedures I have ever done. I know we did it correctly, but you should be feeling some pain. I smile at him and request, when might I return to my facility domicile? He begins to check my peritoneal area and declares, now that's even stranger, you're not bleeding. I reply, doctor, I feel better than I have in months. When might I return to my domicile? The doctor calls the nurse over and asks, how many times have you changed Myra's pad? The nurse replies, she didn't bleed, so we didn't change it. The doctor shakes his head and says, well, this is one for the medical journals to figure out. Mira, you are released back to your room. Just avoid doing anything strenuous for a few days. And notify us immediately if you start to bleed or have any other drainage. Ira smiles at me because we are co-conspirators to what has really happened. Present, Ben and Jens, the waiting room. I was thankful I still had some power left and was able to help Mira. And I meant what I said earlier. Mira wasn't the cause of any marital problems with Ben. I caused all of them by not believing him. I take off all the stupid medical garb they had me wear and walk toward the waiting room. I sneak a peek around the corner and find my Ben just like I knew I would find him. He's pacing the floor like an expectant father. Someday I hope he is one. I walk in, he rushes over and asks, how's Mira? I smile at him and tease a little. If I wasn't so sure of your love for me, I might worry. Ben looks scared, but I giggle and continue. Don't worry, my husband. I totally trust you and Mira is doing well. The doctor walks in and says, Miranda is doing fine. In fact, she's doing better than fine. It's almost like she didn't have the procedure performed at all. Ben questions, Doctor, what do you mean? He says, well, for most women, the procedure is painful and there's lots of bleeding. Mira didn't bleed at all and has no pain. Ben asks, are you sure you did everything correctly? The doctor says, yes, I went back and checked the machine. We did extract a very deformed fetus and the placenta. Ben says, I guess Mira was just lucky. I ask, Ben, do you want to go and see her? Ben hesitates when he says, Jens, are you sure about this? It won't cause you to. I shut my husband up with a kiss, pull away and reply, Ben, I will never again make a stupid mistake of not believing you since I trust you totally. Ben says, well then I guess so. We head to Myra's room, finding Ira is still there. They smile at us and Ira says, thank you, Ms. Blaine. Mira echoes, yes, thank you very much, Ms. Blaine. Ben asks, do both of you feel okay? You seem, well, sort of strange. Mira says, yes, Mr. Blaine, we both feel great. Ben shakes his head and wonders aloud, when did I become Mr. Blaine? Mira giggles and says, you've always been Mr. Blaine, but in the past I haven't called you that. I take Ben's arm, guide him out of the room. Ira follows and motions me to the side of the hall. I go beside her and she asks, Ms. Blaine, is there anything that you can do for Alexei? I touch Ira on the arm and reply, yes, but not today. I'm too tired from helping Mira. We will come back tomorrow and we will see what I can do. Take your time with your sister while Ben and I go to the cafeteria for some lunch. I walk back over to Ben and complain, I'm hungry. Do they have a cafeteria here? Ben answers, the hell if I know, let's ask someone. We stop a nurse in the hallway, and she gives us great directions which really amount to just follow the signs. We get into the cafeteria where I realize that the residents all eat here along with the staff and visitors. I see a couple of folks that I want to talk to. We go through the line, and I load up my plate. Hey, doing what I just did makes me hungry enough to eat a horse. Ben complains, damn Jens, that's more food than I have. I tease him, well, when you're eating for two. Ben practically drops his tray and has a coronary, so I confess, don't worry honey, I'm just teasing you. Ben stutters, Jens, don't ever do that to me again. I order, Ben follow me. I see two seats that are just perfect for us. We walk over to sit across the table from Zarika and Yasmin. The shock on their face is priceless. Heck, Yasmin even drops her fork. I smile at them and say, hey girls, remember us. We're the ones who took you in, and then let's see. Oh yeah, as payment for our kind deeds you burned down the cabin. And because it's an arson fire, the insurance won't pay to have it rebuilt. Ben looks at both of them and says, I am so disappointed in the two of you that after all I did for you, this is how you repay us. I see tears form in the corners of their eyes, but I ignore it and begin to eat. I comment, hey, this is pretty good food. Yasmin laments, I miss Mabel's cooking. Zarika says, we are both so sorry for what we did. One of the doctors comes over and interrupts. You shouldn't be at the same table. I smile at him and agree. You're right. Come on, Ben. Let's find a nicer table to sit at. However, I can't avoid being just a little bad as we leave. As we leave, Zarika and Yasmin begin to scream, get them off us. They're crawling all over us. The doctors rush over and of course don't find anything. We find a table all to ourselves and I comment, now that was fun. Ben asks, but the doctor said. I interrupt. Ben, doctors don't know jack about anything. They don't even know you still have a small piece of shrapnel from the bullet in your elbow. Ben asks, Jens, how did you know? It does bother me from time to time. Jens smiles and replies, I'm your wife, and it's my job to know about my husband. Don't worry, we're going to have it removed so it doesn't bother you anymore. Ben surprises me when he says, there's only one doctor I trust to cut on this arm, and he's in Moscow, Russia. I smile at Ben and ask, so what's it like in Moscow this time of the year? Ben gets a faraway look in his eyes and answers, it's colder than hell. I get excited and ask, Bean, will you buy me a fur coat? Ben laughs, hugs me, and says, of course, all the women in Russia wear them. Then he teases, what should it be, rabbit or squirrel? I fake a pout and suggest, how about silver fox? Ben becomes practical and says, we will see if we have any money left after repairing the cabin. Ben doesn't know it, but we're going to have plenty of money left since we have all the gold recovered from the jet that was shot down. You do remember that, don't you? We finish lunch, Ira comes in and Ben suggests, why don't you get something to eat? We will wait for you. Ira smiles and answers, as you command. She comes back to the table and Ben asks, how's Mira doing? Ira smiles and says, she couldn't be better except she wants to get up and exercise to lose the flabby abdominal region she gained during pregnancy, but the nurses and doctors won't let her. Ben continues with the questions, while the doctor was amazed with her recovery. Ira begins, I was not surprised because of, I kick her in the leg so she doesn't spill the beans to Ben. Ben asks, because of what? Ira tells a plausible lie, because of our constitutions, we heal very rapidly. Ira finishes her lunch and says, are we driving back to the hotel? Ben looks at the time and suggests, why don't we head to Leadville and recover your katanas? Ira states, first we need to stop at the tunnels so I can recover our passports. I ask, why do you need your passports? Ira explains, I slightly damaged one of the sheriff's deputies when I freed Mira and Safia. He will attempt to press charges over my exploit. However, Mira and I have diplomatic passports. I'm impressed and say, wow, those must come in handy. Ira agrees, they have been useful many times. I wish that Ben and I had diplomatic passports. I had no way of knowing what chain of events I set in motion. We leave the clinic, never knowing that we are being watched. Ben does mention, I think I've seen that car behind us before. I turn to look at the car, but it turns the corner, so I ignore Ben's comment. Dear listeners, next part of the story will be released soon. Please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.